The conceptual framework lives at the center of empirical study. The conceptual framework serves as a guide and balance to research, functioning as an integrating ecosystem that helps researchers intentionally bring all aspects of study together through a process that explicates their connections, disjunctures, overlaps, tensions, and the context shaping a research setting and the study of phenomenon that in that setting. As a qualitative researcher, it is vital to understand what a conceptual framework is and the components and how they interact. So keeping that concept in mind, Mr. Brian Mumba is proposing a research study formulated from the following conceptual framework. So we're given a conceptual framework like this. So we have diffusion of innovation, we have trustworthiness, we have intention to use e-government, and we also have the e-learning, also have operant conditioning. So looking at this conceptual framework, you need to understand the concepts behind conceptual framework. What is a conceptual framework to start with? It has been defined in the study. And what is it used? And what are the benefits? So a conceptual framework has been defined is simply what? A structured plan, or it's a model that outlines the key concepts and variables that show how the interactions are in a research study. A conceptual framework is simply what? A map which helps on how and why a phenomenon is expected to occur based on the existing theories. So a conceptual framework will clarify the concepts and variables. A conceptual framework is important to give guide of the methodology. The conceptual framework gives the focus of the study. It helps to narrow down the research scope by identifying the most relevant. It also links theory to practice. A conceptual framework will do what? It will show the practical relevance of the theories in the real world. Conceptual framework has many benefits. It will improve clarity and focus. It will also enhance validity. It will also facilitate how to interpret the results. It will support in problem solving and to improve communication, making it clear to understand how research interacts with others. So now this is a conceptual framework that we have under study. Okay, so we now going to identify and classify the variables that you're seeing in the study and formulate the statistical hypothesis and also what is the role of theories and development of a conceptual framework. 20 marks. Okay, so what variables are we seeing in this study? What variables can you see in that study?
Independent variables.
Yes, independent and dependent variables, but specifically, what are the dependent variables there that you're seeing? What are the independent and dependent variables and the moderating variables? So we have those classifications of variables, but I want you to help us understand which ones are they, the dependent and the independent variables in that study. So what are independent variables? Okay, maybe as you are identifying. Okay, what are independent variables, dependent variables, mediating variables, control variables? When we're dealing with independent variables, we are actually looking at the variables that can be manipulated, that can be categorized to observe the effect that they have on the dependent variable. The independent variable are the cause or the influencer. The dependent variable is the outcome or the effect. So it's a variable that is being measured or observed to assess what? The effect of the dependent variable. Also have a moderating variable. What is a moderating variable? A moderating variable is what? A variable that affects the strength of the relationship between the independent and the dependent variable. So the role that the mediating variable does is to influence the relationship, okay, the strength. We also have control variables. What are control variables? Control variables are variables that are what? Kept constant. Their role is to eliminate any confounding effects. And what are confounding variables? These are the unmeasured variables that may affect the independent variables. We also have mediating variables. Okay, so in this case, our dependent variables, what are our dependent variables? What are independent variables from that definition? So here we're looking at what? What topic can we formulate from here? Please, let's start talking.
So I'm thinking the independent variables are those that are falling diffuse of innovation. And there's also trustworthiness, as well as attitudinal formation under learning theories. I'm thinking like that because the manipulation of them has an effect on the intention to use e-government.
Good. So we're looking at our intention to use e-government. So the intention to use e-government, that is a dependent variable. That is what is being affected. And the independent variable are what influence the use of e-government, which are the diffusion variables, which include compatibility, relative um, advantage, image, complexity, and also the trust with variables, which include trust of the internet, trust of the government, the position of trust, okay? So those are all under the independent variables. We also have the learning theory-based variables, which include the social influence, the perceived cyber risk, the perceived website assistance. All these are falling under what? The independent variables. Okay, so please don't lose marks, be confident. So this is an independent variable. This is an independent variable. Okay, this is what? Dependent variable. Okay, the learning theories, all these are independent variables. So we have one, IV, all these are directing to that. IV, these are IV. Okay, is that clear so far?
Yes.
I want to take my time so that we don't go astray. Okay, so the other question is, what is the appropriate topic that we can assume this one to be? What's an appropriate topic that you can suggest for this one to be? Let's not think very far. Let's be within our mind. Control variables. What control variables do you think we can have here? Control variables are what needs to be held constant here. Age, education level, okay? The prior internet experience or access to technology, those are control variables. The possible topic, can we try? An investigation into factors influencing citizens' intention to use e-government services, a multi-theoretical approach in Zambia, okay? Or we can say examining the role of what? Innovation, trust, and learning in shaping the adoption of what? Intention. Are we together?
Kindly repeat the first one, the first suggested topic.
Okay. The first suggested topic I said, what topic can we say? We can say investigating the factors influencing citizens' intention to use e-government services. A case study of what? Zambia. Is that clear?
Yes.
Does that make sense? Or examining
Okay.
the role of innovation, trust, and learning factors in shaping government adoption. Okay, we're together. Then what else are we looking for? What did I say are the control variables? The variables that do not need to affect our study. Age, the prior knowledge about. Okay, then let us also state the possible hypothesis from here. Mhm.
Hi, Colin. Sorry, my network has been breaking. Can you please repeat on the control variables? Because I think I heard you mention something about access to internet, but then I'm not seeing it on the screen.
What are control variables? These are variables that should not affect the results. So they don't need to be beamed, they're invisible. Okay, so you need to think of what factors should not affect this. I said age is one of them. It should be controlled, it should not affect this. Or prior knowledge about what? IT should not affect that. Okay, those are part of control variables. What things should not affect this, should hold this constant. All right, then what hypothesis can we develop from here? So each of the variables should make a conceptual framework, hypothesis. For instance, we can say hypothesis that is coming from the diffusion theory. H1, we can say compatibility of e-government services is possibly associated with intention to use e-government. Okay, so meaning you're talking about this component here. What hypothesis can we make from this one? You can say relative advantage of e-government services is possibly associated with intention to use e-government. Image associated with e-government services is possibly influences the intention to use e-government. Then the complexity of e-government services is negatively associated with what? Intention to use e-government. So you can come up with a number of hypotheses just from this one here. From here, you can come up with hypotheses under what? Trust. You can say trust in the internet positively influences the intention to use e-government services. And trust in the government positively influences the intention to use e-government. And the position to trust positively influences the trust in the internet. The position to trust positively influences the trust in government. So you have a number of possible hypotheses that can come. Then when we go to this section under learning theories, you can also come up with hypotheses, each of these ones here, and how they affect what? E-government. Okay, so social influence possibly affects the intention to use e-government. Perceived cyber risk positively affects the intention to use e-government. So those are hypotheses. You can even come up with hypotheses from the mediating variables, moderating variables, to say the relationship between trust and internet and intention to use e-government is moderated by what? Position to trust. Or the relationship between trust in the e-government and intention to use government is moderated by the deposition to trust. Okay, I'll send you those in the group, but I want you to analyze that no matter how complex the conceptual framework which is coming, you need to know how these relationships are. Okay, are we together? So we've talked about identifying the variables that are there, formulating statistical hypothesis, and also to explain the role of theories in the development of conceptual framework. What is the role of theories in the development of conceptual frameworks? What role do they play? Number one, the role that conceptual framework plays, it helps to guide what the selection of variables. It helps in guiding the selection of variables. Number two, it helps to explain the relationship of the variables. Number three, it also helps to do what? To provide a basis for the relationships in the variables. So these are the main three relationships that you can talk about. The use of what theories, the guide and selection of variables. So the theories will help us identify the key variables that are relevant. For instance, the diffusion theory, it helps us guide these variables like compatibility, relative advantage, and complexity. They come from this theory. They also help us to explain the relationship between the variable. The theories offer logical explanations on how and why these variables are expected to relate. For instance, the trust theory tells us that users, when they trust the internet and government, they're more likely to use e-government. This is according to the theory. And also they provide basis for hypothesis development. So theories will support what? The formulation of hypotheses in predicting the outcomes. Are we together? So that is one important factor. Any questions so far? Are we clear?
Yes, it's clear.
All right. So we can proceed. What is qualitative research and what is quantitative research? So we discussed this in depth, qualitative research and quantitative research. So qualitative research is a method of inquiry used to explore the understanding of human experiences and behaviors, whereas quantitative is focuses on quantifying these relationships. Now, can you remember what are some of the designs that fall under quantitative research? And what are some of the designs that fall under qualitative research? What research designs fall under qualitative and what research designs fall under qualitative research, quantitative and qualitative research?
Yeah, so one design that falls under qualitative research is case study.
Mhm. So case study falls under what? Qualitative research.
Qualitative.
How about ethnographic?
Under
Qualitative.
qualitative.
How about phenomenological?
Qualitative too.
Okay. How about historical research?
Qualitative.
Descriptive?
Quantitative.
Survey? Descriptive, are you sure?
Descriptive is under quantitative.
Is it both or one? So you need to understand where each of these ones fall under. So we have case study is qualitative. We have experimental, it's quantitative, phenomenological, qualitative, survey. Is quantitative, ethnography, qualitative, correlation, quantitative, grounded theory, qualitative, quasi-experimental, quantitative, narrative research is qualitative, and descriptive is quantitative. Okay. What is sampling error? What is sample error? What is sampling error?
So there's a difference between the sample statistic and the population parameter, the value you obtain from the population.
Okay, we're doing a quick, can you remember? So we've been doing all these now. And what is the purpose of sampling in research? To select a what? A subset population that accurately represents the whole population. So what is a population in the context of research? What do we mean by a population? It's an entire group of individuals or elements in a research. And what is a sample?
It's a subset of the entire population.
Subset of the entire population. Okay. So when we are collecting samples, what is that process called? Sampling. But when we are calculating to count all the participants of the population, what do we call that? A census.
Mhm.
What is the difference between probability and non-probability sampling? In probability, every member has equal chance. Non-probability, not all members have equal chance. Give one example of probability sampling. One example.
Random sampling.
a simple random sampling. And one example of non-probability sampling,
Purposive sampling.
purposive,
Snowball.
convenience, snowball, correct. What is random sampling? What is random sampling?
Where you pick, where every member has a chance to be selected.
Then what type of what does sampling bias mean? These are errors that occur when the sample is not representative. Okay, it may lead to inaccurate results. Why is the sample important in research? Why is sample size important in research? Because the sample that is too small sometimes may not represent the population too well. It may reduce reliability and validity of the findings. What is the purpose of stratified sampling? What is the purpose of what is stratified sampling?
It's where the researcher divides the target group into sections.
Into what do we call those sections? Strata. Okay. So let's look at some of the questions just generally from.
Hi, Colin.
Uh-huh.
Sorry, maybe just before you go forward, number 5 and number 6, techniques and methods are different.
They're the same.
So they can be used interchangeably, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
What is the difference between internal validity and external validity? So internal validity looks at the extent to which a study can establish cause and effect between the variables, which is free from confounding factors, whereas external validity is the extent to which the findings of the study can be generalized to other settings. So we have internal and external validity. So now, how can a researcher ensure that there's content validity in an instrument? How can a researcher ensure the content validity of a survey instrument? What is content validity? Ensuring that the content that is covered in the questionnaire covers all aspects. So you may bring in experts to review your instrument to ensure that the instruments comprehensively cover all relevant aspects, isn't it? Why is construct validity important when measuring concepts like satisfaction or motivation? We know that construct validity it's a tool that actually measures a theoretical concept it claims to measure. So without it, it may be misleading or irrelevant. What methods can be used to test the criterion validity of a new assessment tool? What method can we use to test the criterion validity of a new assessment tool? By comparing the results of the new tool to those of an established tool. Okay, so by testing, they have the ability to predict the future aspect together. So We know that criterion validity falls under what? So the two tools that I use are supposed to give you the same result in short. So how does the presence of confounding variables threaten the validity of study results? What are confounding variables? So the presence of confounding variables, if they are introduced, will produce an alternative explanation for the observed effects. So to make it difficult for us to attribute the results solely to the dependent variable. So it will reduce the internal validity. That's why they need to be excluded. Okay, on reliability, what is reliability in the context of research? Reliability is about consistency. If we are going to repeat the same study over and over on the same sample. So validity, on the other hand, refers to whether the tool is measuring what it's supposed to measure. Question number 7, what are the main types of reliability that we know? This one you can remember. What are the main types of reliability?
Test, retest.
Test, retest, yes.
Iterator.
Iterator.
Iterator, yes. And what?
Internal consistency.
Yes, internal consistency. So what does test retest measure? It assesses that by administering the same test to the same group at two different times, it should measure the same measure. Iterator, what does it talk about?
Where the same test is done by two different people or researchers.
Okay. Yes. Where you're assessing, comparing scores by different raters or observers. How about internal consistency? It makes use of statistics like what? Comeback alpha to measure the consistency across all items. How does the use of a standardized procedure contribute to reliability of a study? So when you're using standardized procedures or instruments, they will ensure that there's consistency in how the research is conducted. So here, they'll minimize the margin of error. So what is Cronbach alpha? What does it indicate? Cronbach alpha, what does it indicate? What does Cronbach alpha, what does it indicate? I've been explaining how to use the Cronbach alpha. Who remembers? It is an alpha coefficient which measures internal consistency. It shows how closely the related set of items in a group are. So if you have a higher value, which is above 0.7, it indicates a good reliability. Okay. So can a research instrument be reliable but not valid? Explain with an example. Yes. For instance, using a scale, I usually give a scale. If it shows 5 kgs more than the actual, the weight is reliable. It's consistently giving you wrong results, but it's not valid because the weight is not true. So validity and reliability are two different aspects. Okay. So continue the next class. We'll be looking at the general questions just for you to understand some key concepts. So I'll send the next link. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.